Kenya's Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu is due back in court today for a plea hearing. She's been arrested on charges of corruption, accused of failing to pay tax and improper dealings with a local bank now in receivership, and has been released on bail of $50,000. Mwilu is the second most powerful judge in Kenya. Authorities say her arrest is proof that no one is above the government's war on corruption.
In view of the above, I have concluded that the evidence is sufficient with a reasonable prospect of conviction, and it is in the public interest that criminal proceedings should be preferred. Investigating and punishing wrongdoing is difficult and painful, but it has to be done. Adherence to the rule of law binds and strengthens us as a nation.
Well, just moments ago, we learned that there's a High Court ruling that's overturned the Deputy Chief Justice's prosecution. But let's still explore Kenya's crackdown on corruption with political analyst Mark Bichachi, who is joining me now in studio. Mark, thank you. Now, the Director of Public Prosecutions in Kenya has warned that the Deputy Chief Justice's arrest is only the beginning in the fight against corruption, particularly targeting, high-level people in society. Is this evidence, though, that there will be political strength and evidence in arresting high-level individuals?
One of the things that has been proved true so far is that the president, through the DCI and the various anti-corruption agencies in the country, has been very serious in the arrest of high-profile individuals involved in corruption. Now, one of the places that the fight had not stepped into is, of course, the judiciary. Now, why is it critical? It's common knowledge in Kenya that justice is dispensed based on the weight of someone's pockets. We've known for a very long time as Kenyans that if you have a lot of money, then you can buy yourself out of any case. And therefore, the fight against corruption had to go to the doorstep of the judiciary. Because if you remember the judicial review of a few years ago, there were very, very many judges who had to step down because they could not explain where they got their significant wealth. And therefore, we expect that this battle will go on. I expect that there will be more arrests of other judges in various courts and magistrates, because if the fight of corruption has to happen, it has to happen within our judiciary as well. And
that you did mention, though, that there's a perception in Kenya that justice is for hire, and that high-level personalities, if they have money, may get away with corrupt attitude. So this talk about the fight against corruption has been ongoing in Kenya for years. What will it take, though, for the public to feel confident that finally the political will from the executive is starting to bear fruit?
Now, that's exactly the statement, the political will from the executive. Now, the only way that the executive can give the public the indication that they have the will to do it is if they consistently continue to arrest people every week and every day based on evidence they've received. And what needs to happen now is we've seen a lot of big fish, as we call them in Kenya, being arrested. That means permanent secretaries, former cabinet secretaries being arrested. But what needs to happen now is we also need to see the man on the street who's bribing the police officer, the man on the street who's bribing for a tender, being equally arrested. Now, when that begins to happen on a consistent level, and President Uhuru Kenyatta has 4 years to do that, when it's consistent for 4 years, and then during the primaries of the political parties, we see that people who have been indicted against corruption being barred from running for office, that is when Kenyans will wake up to the reality that the fight against corruption is real. But for as long as a former CS can then run for governor or then run for presidency after being indicted for corruption or being charged against corruption, then we will lose the fight. So there has to be sustainability, and then there's got to be political consequence for the people who've engaged in corruption.
But there are going to be stumbling blocks, although, because even if the Director of Public Prosecutions has started, the new Director of Public Prosecutions, if we may mention, has started on a rather high note, and he's quite aggressive in the fight against corruption. What are going to be some of the stumbling blocks that this is likely to face?
The stumbling blocks are some of the ones that we saw yesterday, where we saw tribalism come into play, where people who come from her ethnic community were saying that she should be left alone for the simple reason that she belongs in their ethnic community. The second issue is when politics begins to come to play, where different political parties begin to defend people who've been arrested or indicted for corruption. Now, the only way to change that is to have a consistent and balanced approach to the fight against corruption. What do I mean balanced? But what I mean balanced, in this country, we are very polarized according to tribes. So there needs to be arrests for the public's view, at least, that is balanced. So you've got Kamau here, and Wetangula here, and Johnson here. So you need to balance it. And if it's not balanced, then what will happen is then it will be seen to be skewed. So the DPP has many political considerations to make that are based on ethnicity that he needs to consistently show that it is balanced. So you've got to arrest nearly almost everyone from every tribe in this country for Kenyans to feel like it is not a tribal agenda.
All right, Mark Bichachi, thank you very much for your insights on Kenya's corruption fight.